Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
If you have suffered from emotional abuse of any kind, then your story is my story too. My name is Gina Coviello, and I know how it feels to be betrayed by people who are supposed to love you. I know the emotional pain of feeling utterly alone in the world, unable to feel safe with others. Embracing self-love changed my life and my relationship struggles. Self-love can do the same for you. Please join me on a path of healing through self-love. My story is your story too.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, I have a lovely guest with me who has recently published a book that we will be sharing with you today. Today, my guest is Susan Glenney. She is the author of Moments in Time with 16 Men and The Bow Tie. She writes to help readers to reflect and discover their true selves. Her newest novella, The Bow Tie, is available on Amazon. So, Susan, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate you having me here today.
And it's so cool that you have two books out now. I think when I first talked with you, maybe it was just the one and one on the way. So how does it feel to be a published author at this point?
I'm really excited because this last book, The Bow Tie, this right here, and if you're listening, you don't have visual. The Bow Tie is a novella, and I really worked very hard on the research in it and to get it right. And it's a spin-off on one of the characters in Moments in Time with 16 Men. It's a spin-off on the unknown man. And so what I did is I dig deeper into the unknown man, and I did a lot of research on the topic of abuse and family abuse because I am an incest survivor. I want to really get it right. And it's gotten really good reviews. I'm really, really happy with it. And a lot of the people who read it said they've been very moved by it. And a real nice feather to add to my hat is that it recently was nominated for Best Women's Fiction in RISD newsletter. They publish their books in England that if they've helped an author with something, you're able to submit your book. It's like a indie book for authors and very high end, and it's almost like an interview process. But they took my book and they nominated it as best of for their last newsletter. So I'm real excited about that.
I am so thrilled to hear that for you. I'm familiar with that process. That's really beautiful.
Yes.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. It's been a long time coming. I just turned 66 a few weeks ago. So the whole thing is, no matter where you are in life, there are roadblocks, but I'm a late bloomer and you can still, pursue your dreams even later in life. And I'm proof of it.
Oh, that's beautiful too. Wow, what a treat you are for everyone today to listen to.
Thank you.
I love that you've taken, adversity, some really hard times from your childhood, and you are now focusing on healing and thriving and living your dreams. Like you are the poster child for my show, Heal, Thrive, Dream, right? So
Yes.
is there things about your healing journey, like how you got from point A to where you are now? Like what about your journey did you do that was super healing for you?
I would say, first of all, when the issues came up, it was in my mid-30s, and it was horrific. And again, back then, you think about the mental health industry and how it's changed since COVID. And back then, 30 years ago, people, if you were a survivor, you never, ever talked about it. It was shut up, locked inside me, and I didn't talk to anybody about it for years. Finally, I did. But back then, there weren't the resources. And so it was a lot harder. And so I just sort of healed myself through a lot of meditation and spiritual work. And then later on in life, when the issues came up on a deeper level, I did heal with someone who also was a survivor. But it's a bumpy road, but it's worth taking because, what's the alternative? For those who don't heal, their life is miserable. And I'm here to say that it's a bit by bit, like the tortoise going on the race. It's not really a race, but going on the path, it's slow but steady wins the race. And that's the healing process. And now, because everything's more accessible, there's in the last 20 years, I've done different healings, and some I have taken with me and some I haven't. And I know you had an episode with a woman who specialized in Bach flower essences. So, and I listened to it and I really liked it. And so I thought, wow, back then, maybe 10 years ago, I used to do flower essences. There's a woman, Green Hope Farm in New Hampshire, and she does a lot like the Bach flower essences. And I did that, and it did help me quite a bit. So after listening to your podcast, I thought I'm going to go back and get some Bach essences, and that's a tool. So depending on, I think, where you are in your life, when you heal, the tools may change. And so you've got to be open to tweaking. And then also with tools, what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. So you've got to kind of figure out what works for you. I know someone who meditation doesn't work for her. It just doesn't. She's tried. And she's a, very spiritual person, and it just doesn't work for her. With me, it works fabulous. So that's the whole thing. And then in my book, The Bow Tie, Jennifer is this award-winning elementary school teacher. And in the midst of her career, like a year or so after she got her Teacher of the Year award, she started getting the flashbacks and the nightmares. And it had such an effect on her, she had to quit teaching. And she didn't tell anybody. She made an excuse she wasn't going to tell anybody what really happened at the school system. And she was kind of on her own for a while. And then she got a job at a card shop, and she found someone who could help with her. And I purposely had this person at the card shop, also a survivor, because I wanted to show how the owner of the card shop and Jennifer, they both have their own different paths for healing. And that was really critical because it's never one size fits all. And Alicia, for example, said to Jennifer one day, why don't you get a massage? It massaged really well for me for healing. And Jennifer goes, no, I don't want anybody to touch me. And it's interesting that later in the book, Jennifer is able to do forgiveness work. She talked about it with Alicia, and Alicia was not able to forgive stepfather. So again, it's what works for you. And if I could read a small little passage.
I would love that.
Okay. So this is on the forgiveness. And this takes place in Portland, Maine. It was golden hour as Jennifer, back in Portland, parked her car near a grassy spot overlooking the Atlantic. She spread out her favorite blue blanket and opened her craft box. Inside were dozens of origami swans she made from the unmailed forgiveness letters that she'd written to her father, uncle, and mother. There was also one paper boat in which she placed the bow tie. The tide was going out as she walked down to the ocean with her box of swans. She stood knee-deep in the water and gazed out at the brilliant blue horizon. She thought about what a peaceful evening it was, and she felt grateful. She thought about how far she'd come and how thankful she was to be alive. Gazing down at her box of paper swans, she remembered the day, now years in the past, when she'd made them with her students, telling the kids never to forget how much they mattered. At last, she was learning to listen to herself. Tears spilt down Jennifer's face as she dropped the birds in the water one by one. The boat containing the bow tie followed last. She gave it a little push. Jennifer watched her pain, transformed into art, float to the horizon. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she inhaled the salty ocean air, and her face broke involuntarily into a smile. A real smile, full of joy and peace, for no one but herself in the vast open ocean. So that's her forgiveness. That's part of her forgiveness process.
The imagery was really well done, Susan.
Thank you. And these are like the little origami swans grains that she made. And when she was a teacher, she had each child in her class make it, pick out their favorite color, make an origami swan and put their name on it. And she made a mobile and hung it in the classroom. And she said at the end of the year, she said, always remember to look up and see you there and that you mean something. At the end of the year, she gave all the origami swans to each student so they could bring it home for the summer. And she finally learned to do the lesson for herself. And that's when she went down to the ocean and really appreciated herself, just like she wanted her students to appreciate themselves.
It's very moving. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm from Maine.
Yes, I remember. I vaguely remember. You're from, I think, way up north.
Yeah, Northeast. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fort Fairfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, very cool. Last week I was well, actually, no, the whole month, like 3 weeks, I was part of a book launch of another survivor from my hometown in Maine. She's now written, I know she's got 2 books published. She might have written more than that. I'm not sure. But, so it's extra special to me that you said it in Maine. That's beautiful. I love the imagery of the water and just the release. That was very beautiful.
Right. And I think for me, and I know from what I've read for quite a few people who are survivors, being outdoors is very healing.
Yeah.
And for me, always growing up, it's a safe space. And even now, it's so vital to me. Some people like working out at a gym. I mean, just anybody, regardless of your background, or, if you've had trauma or not, but working out at a gym. But I love the outdoors. I'm outdoors almost every day, and I have my stupid looking red Santa Claus parka that makes me look like a Santa Claus Michelin person. And it was like -30. And what's good, it's bright red, so no one's going to run me over. And I can walk in the woods, and it's, well, sort of woods. And it has kept me going, and I've had it for like 30 years. It's like, it's
It's so
like,
funny.
yeah. And so
I
I
need you
love
to
being
send me a
outdoors.
picture of
Yeah.
that. I
Excuse
need you to send me a picture.
me.
Because now I'm never going to forget you.
Yeah, Susan at her best.
I would say for me that I was not an outdoor person when I was younger, but as I get older, I really have appreciated it and found it more serene. I went on a trip to New Zealand. I used to help with adoption work. And New Zealand is so tranquil. There's not a lot of development. Like, there's not a lot of high rises. There's a lot of nature. And I just found that trip to be so soothing. Yeah. And then my family and I, during spring break, we went to New Mexico and Arizona. And the landscape was just gorgeous. That was also very soothing. So I'm glad you mentioned. I do think nature. There's a lot to be said, and now there's more information coming about forest bathing even.
Hmm.
So spending out time in nature can be really healing for people. That's really cool. What gave you the idea to write in a novella style?
One, because it's shorter. Yeah. And I just wanted to really make it so that it's just almost like it's dense, but without being overly dense. I wanted to make it so the focus would be there from start to finish. Whereas for the novel, you have more of a plot, and things go in many different directions, or they can. But whereas the novella, it's got to be very focused, and so the reader has to really kind of dive into the novella, and that's, I think, I accomplished that, because you're really going along with Jennifer's journey, and you're feeling what she's feeling, and it isn't always fun, but you also are seeing her triumphs. You're seeing her when she's like, "Oh my God, I'm feeling really good today," or "Oh my God,
There's hope.
her body was really shut down, and she didn't menstruate for a few years. Now she's like back to being a woman, and she's back to feeling whole, and she's returning to her heart. That's the whole key is in life, I think, is to return to your heart, because the heart is really where the truth lies. And we are so saturated with living out there, and technology's fabulous and not fabulous. It connects the world, at the same time it disconnects the world. And the more we're connected out there and living in the future or dwelling on the past, the less we're in the present. And so when you breathe, that's my biggest tool for me, and also it was for Jennifer, is the breath work. Just as I say to people, you don't have to buy it on Amazon. You don't have to wait for it to get delivered. You don't have to do a doctor's appointment. It's there for
free.
you. It's
Yeah.
free. And it's like your best friend. And it is always there for you. I think what I finally got just recently when I talk to people about breath work is it's just 3 breaths, and you can just go. And what people seem to forget is that in the heat of the moment, they'll say, "Oh, I'm too busy." That's when you need it most. But when you do tools, it's really good. That's why they call it a toolkit. It's really good to learn about the tool ahead of time and
Yes.
not just hear about it. It's like, oh, breath work. You need to do a little exercise of doing it ahead of time, or read about it on a YouTube video or a book or an expert, and then practice it a few times when you're in a good space. And then when the situation arises at the heat of the moment, you've already done your rehearsal on the breath work. So it's like, oh, I can do it now. So you don't want to like all of a sudden incorporate the tools when you're not familiar with them. So that's really, I think, one of the things that people need to know about tools and any kind of healing is do a little research, practice, and remind yourself at the heat of the moment, pause, I have a tool, and then go right to it.
That's really solid advice. You know, you said something really, really important earlier, is that not all the methods, not all the tools, not all the healing options work for everybody. And that's really okay, because we're not cookies. You know, we don't want cookie cutter. We want to work with people that see our uniqueness. And yes, there's some foundational thing will work for most people, but it's really about experimenting, because there's only one you know, and it's your healing journey is going to look different from someone else's.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when did you find out that writing could be part of your healing journey?
I think it was really dormant most of my life, but it's interesting. When I did write, it was always it was mostly outdoors in nature and looking back. And I had a poem in 6th grade. It was was selected for the newspaper, which is a big deal. I was like, oh my God. And it was on the Four Seasons. And I thought, oh, and then later on, I read something in high school. It wasn't published or anything. It was just in a journal of mine. It was on the fall season, and I kept it. And so that was sort of one of the seeds of my sprouting, my writing journey. But it was really in my 30s when I was doing freelance writing for the Kennebec Journal, and they were asking me to do more and more. And I was doing a lot of their Sunday, not a lot, but some of their Sunday features, which require more work because it's the cover page. I also do the photography. So they got like a little 2-for-1 deal with me, and, the photos were really good, I thought, and the writing was pretty good. But my heart kept pounding. And I go, no, you got to do something different. And I ignored my heart. I ignored it probably for a few years, and it kept like getting louder and louder to the point where I couldn't ignore it. They said, you need to start writing something differently. You need to start writing these short stories. And again, it was my heart that directed me. That's why if you really listen to your heart, it will guide you. But if you're so saturated with what's out there and the more you are in a frenzy, the less you're connected to your heart. So it's a step-by-step of retraining to be gentle and go within. And if you can just practice it a little bit each day, and then you're aware of it. You're aware of the feeling of the heart. And so I started writing. My first draft, I gave it to an editor. Actually, it wasn't really a first draft. It was more of a third draft, and I thought it was ready. And she said, like, no way. It ain't ready, honey. She's like, it needs a lot of work. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, it's really flat.
Did you feel defeated at all?
Oh, gosh, yes. And she
I think it's important to say that, yeah.
Yeah, oh, God. I felt like, oh, my God. I mean, you put years into So I went back to the drawing board, started from square one, and I did a lot on, the craft of writing and, took courses and I read and read and read. And that was part of it, the technical part, but it was that I didn't deal with any of the trauma in the book. And I had to really delve in. And that's why I did research too on that. And I had to make it real, not like a Hallmark version, sanitized. I had to really make it real. So I had to dig into Jennifer, which meant I had to dig also into myself, because Jennifer's very different than me. And the book is fiction, but there are some similarities. So I had to dig into that, and I did a lot on research on the subject matter. And then I got the book right. So I even did more research when I did, I'm pointing over here, the bow tie. It's funny when you look at the screen, it's different.
I know.
The bow tie. And I did more research. And that's when I really got it right. So, and I didn't really want to do the bow tie either. But the heart kept going, oh, this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And
we eventually listened to it. Some of us are slower warmers to it. Yeah. I kept saying to yourself, like, why do you want to be a therapist? Like, what's fun about talking about people's traumas all day? And it's like, maybe my work doesn't have to be fun. Maybe it needs to be rewarding and healing. Mm-hmm. And maybe my free time, like my travel and reading, maybe some of that could be the fun part.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so we're a work of progress. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, very good. We talked about your books earlier before we started recording. I'm really eager to read them and learn more and do reviews and stuff for you. I think the novella aspect of your writing, I just think it's really creative and fun. Even though you're writing about, surviving, when we add creativity to it, it does something for the brain. It's working both sides of the brain. It's a very beautiful thing.
Thank you.
So, Susan, as we wrap up today, do you have any other things that you want to mention? Like, I don't think you do any coaching at this point. You're mostly focusing on being an author. Is that right?
Right, right. Yes, I am. I just want to let people know out there is that a percentage of each book sold goes to the New Horizons Domestic Violence Services in Middlesex County, Connecticut. So each year I make them a check. And so when you buy my book, it helps not just me as an indie author, it helps open the door for support for people who really are in a vulnerable place. So it's really appreciated down there. Of course, I appreciate it too. And you can go to susanglenny.com and you can sign up for my newsletter and you get a free chapter on a road trip she took in Canada with Leo. He's a really cool dude. And then you can learn more about me, or you can get the books on Amazon and you can get them through Kindle. You can listen to it, or you can do paperback. So I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love it for everybody to, check in on Jennifer's world and how she heals herself. And
It's gorgeous. Can you say the link one more time to your gift?
It's
your website?
You can just go to susanglenny.com and or susanglenny.com/newsletter or susanglenny.com, and you'll get hooked into my website, and there you can get into the newsletter and also where you get the free chapter on a road trip. She goes with Leo, and actually Leo is my favorite character in the book. He's a really cool dude. They run into some real trouble, but I won't tell you it I won't tell you.
Can you tell us where they go in Canada?
They go to God, it was a while ago. My French is so terrible. They go through Ontario and then they ended up in Montreal, and it's the customs where they get stopped. And
I can't wait.
Yeah, and Leo's the type of guy where Jennifer did, and she was wrong. You can't always judge a book by its cover because he has, he was a little grunge, and she was like really nervous with him, and it was a totally loving road trip, and he was the one who opened her to spirituality. And she didn't really pick up on it, but she did, the seed was planted. And like 20 years later, she realized her breath work and learning about meditation was through Leo. But the law had different visions of Leo because of the way he looked. So you see how she you can't always judge a book by its cover. And she was proof. She initially did. And then she realized that Leo was one of the most coolest spiritual persons she's ever met. And she's also able to be very open with him on the trip.
I love that. That makes me feel a little teary-eyed, because I think a lot of people get misjudged. And the clean-cut, handsome, in the dress to the nines dude can be the biggest snake in the world and be grooming people and abusing people. Meanwhile, there's people that can be tattooed and pierced out that can be full of love, So well done, Miss Susan. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up the show. I do want to stick around to talk to you just for a few minutes afterwards about some things coming up that maybe we can partner in. But I really want to thank you for your time and the energy that you're doing for survivors. I know this is your life's work, but it is and also a blessing for other survivors. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you so much, listeners, for listening to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.
If you have suffered from emotional abuse of any kind, then your story is my story too. My name is Gina Coviello, and I know how it feels to be betrayed by people who are supposed to love you. I know the emotional pain of feeling utterly alone in the world, unable to feel safe with others. Embracing self-love changed my life and my relationship struggles. Self-love can do the same for you. Please join me on a path of healing through self-love. My story is your story too.